Welcome to Real Leaders with Roshini, the podcast with real talk, real questions, real insight, and we hope real inspiration. For real. Today, Real Leaders with Roshini is on the road for a special edition at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. My guest today is Joan Gabel, the 17th president of the University of Minnesota. Thanks for letting us in your digs today.
Well, thanks for coming.
So, you have been in a lot of places, a lot of high places, I should say. Dean of a business school, provost of the University of South Carolina. A lot of people think of these as places that are sort of ivory towers. Now you're the president of the University of Minnesota, 27,000 employees, 67,000 students, nearly 600,000 alumni around the world. That's pretty big.
It's pretty big. It's a big place, but it also has a wonderful culture that feels very at home, very aware of its place and connected, and that was one of the things that attracted me to it.
You have kind of an interesting background by way of geography. Born in New York,
yes.
So a Yankee, but...
By birth, yes.
By birth, but you grew up in Atlanta, so
I did.
Would you say you're a Southern gal?
I like to think that my roots are where I'm planted. So I was born in New York, and most of my extended family is there, although there's a branch in a couple of other places. Most of my transformational years were in Atlanta, but because of the kind of work my father did, we moved a lot. And I think that made me adaptable and sort of culturally open. I tend to like something about every place I am. And I know that sounds sort of absurdly optimistic, but it's really true that you make a decision, I think, in life if you're going into a new place to just choose to like it and to find the things that you like about it. And so I find that I do that about where I'm living and about the culture of where I am. So I feel a lot of affinity with the South. I'm very comfortable there, but I feel very comfortable here too.
So can you still pull a New York or New Jersey accent?
I cannot do a New Jersey accent, but what happens to me, and my children give me a lot of grief about this, is that because I've lived in a lot of different places and I was a kid when we moved, and you want to blend in as a kid, I have this tendency to very quickly pick up the accent of where I am, even now, even as an adult. And so if I'm there, I tend to sound like I'm from that place, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. So I don't know why that is. It's not. I don't know if it's a good talent or something to be embarrassed about, but it is what it is, and that's what I do. So yes, if we were traveling together, Roshini, for sure, when we were in New York or Atlanta, I would sound like I was from New York or
So
Atlanta.
your New Yorker family then wouldn't be embarrassed. You could blend right back in.
No, I don't embarrass my family ever, ever, ever.
Ever. So another fun fact, I find a fun fact about you, some might find a little freakish, is that you started college at the age of 16.
I did.
How does that happen?
Well, it wasn't freakish at all, if I may say. It was just the way the timing worked out. So I went to Catholic school growing up, and I'm old enough that when you started kindergarten in my day, if you met certain milestones, they placed you either in kindergarten or first grade. So my mother could have told us if she was still here what those milestones were. I frankly don't know, but whatever they assessed, they put me in first grade instead of kindergarten, and I was 5. So that was the first year. And then when I was in high school, I decided at that time that I thought I wanted to be a medical doctor. And I was looking ahead, and I may not surprise anyone here who's met me so far, and it probably doesn't surprise you that I'm a bit of a planner. And I was thinking, well, 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, however many years of residency and other training, and I want to have a family, I should get started early. So I started taking classes at the local community college and summer school and caught up another year. So it wasn't like I was Doogie Howser. I started a little early, and I took some extra credits, and that's why I started at 16.
But meantime, some of your classmates were just enjoying the beach that summer.
They were.
And you're sitting here worried about, 12 years in advance.
I know.
Which is great. But it's also kind of given you some platforms at an age where you can also enjoy them.
It's true. What has come of it, and I would say there was much more upside than downside, although there was probably some downside at the time. If I look back, I think maybe I would have thought about things differently, but I have no regrets. But it did buy me some time. Even though I ultimately didn't pursue that type of education, it put me through school a little younger. I was able to really think about what I wanted to do for graduate school, and I didn't feel any sense of urgency around that, whereas many of my colleagues and friends at the time, and even I see this with our students a couple of generations later, generation and a half later, when they come out of college, there's a lot of stress around feeling like they're supposed to know what they're going to do and what their path is, and I really didn't feel that pressure. And I think it was because I felt like I had 2 free years to sort of figure it out, which I used. And then 2 years later went to graduate school.
Well, speaking of starting early, you also met your would-be husband and husband early.
Very young, yes.
Married young, had 3 kids. What is that like? Because you also didn't slow down on the career side.
No, well, I have a wonderful husband, and I tell a lot of the groups that I speak to about leadership and success and thinking about your journey that you should pick your partner well, because that is, in my opinion, cornerstone to being able to do things in what we try to call work-life balance, or we call work-life balance, but try to achieve. And so he's wonderful and supportive, and I hope he would say the same. You'd have to ask him. But because of that, we were able to really think about our own continuing education, our career trajectories moving, which we've done a few times over the course of both of our careers, and having really nice, lovely children who are wonderful humans, in my opinion, who are now grown or almost grown and don't hate me, I'm pleased to report.
That is a bonus.
Exactly.
So you have said on the personal side, your family really is something you are the most proud of.
Everything. They're everything, of course. I mean, I have been so lucky to have really fulfilling work, and in a way that allowed me to be present in my children's life and support my husband in his own career and vice versa. But at the end of the day, I think of a quote that I'm probably going to butcher, that Jackie Kennedy Onassis said, that if you don't do well by your children, if you choose to have them, if you don't do well by your children, then what's the point of everything else? And I really think about that a lot when I set my priorities. Now, the good news is, either by virtue of their circumstances or their personality or who they ended up with as parents, they're very flexible, they're very independent, all 3 in different ways, and very supportive. And so I really, they never made me feel like I was putting them second. I don't think I ever put them second. I think we struck that balance delicately but well, and I think it all worked out in the end because we were really a team.
What would you say your children have taught you?
That you have to remember what's important, that you can do things in different ways, and that's okay. Let me explain that one a little bit, because I have 3 kids, a daughter and 2 sons. They all have very different political beliefs. They have different talents, ambitions, different types of work ethic. Although they all have high work ethics, they go about things in very different ways. And it has been sort of this series of happy surprises and aha moments, seeing them be very different from me or my husband in how they do things, and having to sort of purposefully say to yourself, that's really great, and it's not just okay, it's great, and that we choose, not everybody would, but for us, we see that as a symbol of having done well by what we intended to do, which is to make them feel as if they could do things their own way. I consider that part of how we wanted to raise our children. It may not be everybody's jam, but that was certainly ours. And then I can extrapolate from that into how I treat people who work with me, for me, that they may have their eye on the prize but go about it in a different way. It's helped me in my leadership. I don't consider parenting leadership. I actually think in many ways it's the most profound followership. But at the same time, you do learn from the fact that these are not extensions of you. They are actually totally independent people that you then have to let be independent, and that applies in lots of different arenas in life.
A communication skill that's getting talked about a lot lately, but is really underrepresented, is listening. And I've had the pleasure of talking with a lot of leaders on this podcast about that very thing. What is your take on listening?
Well, I'm going to butcher another quote, which is, if you want to prove to someone all you have to do is speak to prove to someone that you're stupid. I can't remember it exactly, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. And so I do try to listen. But one of the things that's part of the learning curve and adjustment to taking on a position like this is that people want to get to know you, and you have to open your mouth for that to happen. And people want to know your opinion, and you then represent this very large, complex entity that you described that has a deep and important mission and has really impacted a lot of people. And you become, the minute you walk through the door, arguably even before you walk through the door, the personification of all of that. And so people do want to hear what you have to say. But at the same time, I have a lot to learn, and I'm very aware of that. And so I really do try to listen, but I find myself having to be intentional about that in how I have conversations and exchanges, because there is this temptation to sort of give this speech every time I'm in a new situation and say, here's my plans, and here's why I think this is great, and here's why I'm glad to be here. And I have lots of things I like to say about all of those things, but then I don't learn anything. So I'm really trying to do well by this institution and all of the people that you listed earlier, and this state, by learning a lot before I do anything that I'd have to pull back from. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to move excessively slowly or never say anything in a conversation, only listen, but I'm hoping I thread that needle just right.
Your track record shows that you have a respect for innovation. You support innovation. What are some areas of innovation that you would like to bring to your credentials, but also to the state of Minnesota? And really, the state of Minnesota, the University of Minnesota, touches the country and the world. So I don't even want to say to the state of Minnesota, but really, what's your take on innovation? What would you like to support?
That's a really good question. So the way it really does go to core mission, though, when you think about it, even though it's forward-looking, you can't do it well unless you're anchored in some legacy, and we really are lucky to have both at this university and in this state. So we touch the whole state, we're inspired by the state, and we serve the state, but because of what this state is and how diverse it is, if you do well here, you do impact the country and the world. And so one of the things one of the attributes that's so fantastic about this university writ large, the system, is its geographic reach, how in each of those geographies and in the missions of each of the campus, you are inspiring a different type of innovation. And then that the big campus, if you will, the flagship campus, the Twin Cities campus, is anchored in this incredible corporate ecosystem. It's the only university of its type that is at a world-class level, that has a land-grant mission fulfilled by extension outreach multi-campus system, and is anchored in a corporate headquartered community. And so what that means is that we should and do have a really unique spectrum of innovation that we can bring to the table, either through our students who are innovators and our faculty and staff who are innovators, or by facilitating the innovation with our corporate partners, by their own entrepreneurship, how they like to spin off new things. And so I see that being a hub and spoke sort of model, where the university hopefully sits at the center sometimes with faculty, staff, and students, and then sometimes is one of the spokes on someone else's hub, if it's one of our corporate partners or one of the communities where we have outreach and innovation. I went to my first Farm Fest and listened to the type of work that we're doing around ag research, the way in which some of the commodities are looking for innovative uses of what we would have originally considered purely food. And our faculty and staff and students are out there in there doing that. They're also into 4-H, pulling high school students up into that. And that all fits together to me in the footprint that we have, in the best sense of the word footprint. Sometimes that word can have a negative connotation in inspiring a new kind of innovation. So it's easy to default to, well, we'll have students in a pitch competition figuring out a business they would like to start, and we do that, and that's important, and we do it well, I think. And in my observation, we have Minnesota Cups coming up really soon, which is a great event, but we also can be the receivers of ideas and then facilitate them. And because of our place in the state physically and our importance in the state as the source of new knowledge, I think we're able to do that uniquely well. And that's what I would like to see happen.
Let's talk sports for a bit.
Sure.
I know you're a sports fan.
I am.
The big main sports, so to speak, get a lot of the attention. What do you want to do for, or how do you think the rest of us should support some of the sports that don't always get the attention? The lacrosse team, our volleyball team, although is getting a lot of attention, it's doing so great.
Deserved, yes.
But in some schools, volleyball doesn't get that attention. Synchronized swimming, different things like this. How do you want fans and supporters of the U to look at those sports?
So we think about that a lot because we have 675 student athletes here. They make a unique type of commitment that I think is hard for people to understand, to be able to compete at the level at which they compete. And it creates an unbelievable opportunity around their student experience, which is the most important thing. They are student athletes, and we believe in that, respect that, nurture that, believe in the well-being that obligates us to provide, believe in the type of adults that we want them to be as they complete their education, and believe in the fact that they should win and create an amazing experience for themselves and a fan experience. And what I would say is, if you haven't tried it, you really should, as a fan, attending a sporting event that you might not expect, because what we are able to offer with some of the sports that we would broadly call the Olympic sports that are not as generally considered the big time in terms of a fan experience is you're up close. You can look that competitor in the face as they dig deep and try to get where they want to go. You can see them pulling from all of the components of their training, which in my opinion includes their academic training, to strategize, to figure things out. It is a front row experience, and they're amazing, and they win. And I think you would have a lot of fun if you attended one of their events.
Which it's fun to go to some of those events like softball, some of these other sports that, and again, now I list some of these and more of them are getting more national attention, which is some of the beauty of Big Ten Network, ESPN College. What is your take on the media coverage of sports, and how might that continue to help the University of Minnesota when it comes to revenue?
The athletic department, our athletes, our coaches, all the staff together create what I have called, although I certainly didn't coin this phrase, the front porch of the university. This is true at really all universities like ours in the Big Ten and any of the Power Five conferences, and arguably even some that don't compete at Power Five level, in that being a fan of our student athletes, being a fan of athletics is often the main point of entry for someone who engages with the university or who has engaged with the university in the past as a student and is remaining connected to the university. It's often that way. It's on their TV, it's on their radio, it's streaming through an app, or however you're listening to it on a headphone while you drive a combine, and it's all over the state. It's at the same time in the same place for everyone. It's accessible. And where that's a part of our accessibility is for you to cheer for us to want you to cheer for us to cheer for ourselves, frankly. And it's really a magnetic engagement opportunity. But you have to transmit it in order for that to happen. And that is something that we need to think about in a very clever entrepreneurial way, in a partnered way, in ways that get us out to everyone who would want to see us, in ways that generate revenue so that we can have it be as high quality and experience for our student athletes, for our coaches, faculty, staff, and for our fans as possible. And so we partner to do that. We leverage the collaborative nature of the Big Ten Conference. We work with very high level partners in how we project, promote, and stream that content. And I don't see that conversation ending anytime soon. It's in constant evolution.
Let's talk music.
Okay.
If there's a theme song for Joan Gabel's life, what would it be?
Tears for Fears, Mad World.
Why is that? That's
my
not
favorite.
That wasn't one of the, top 40 ones that kept playing in the 80s.
No. This is a song that I All right, so it is one of my favorite songs, and it's one of those songs that in the right frame of mind I might put on over and over again. And it is a slightly depressing song, but it also makes you want to tap your toe. And I love that combination. And it is almost a theme song for probably the most transformational years of my life. So anyone who's old enough to remember that song, my children say it's one of their favorite oldies, which is humbling. But I just, that is a on repeat song for me a lot of the time.
I remember seeing Tears for Fears at the Orpheum. They came out when I was in high school, but I think it was during my college years. Mm-hmm. And to see them, that front row kind of feeling in the Orpheum smaller theater. And, music does bring you back to different parts of your life. Do you and your husband have a song that kind of takes you back or is
now
thematic?
That's a good question. Some families, and we have lots of friends like this, and some of my children are like this, not all three, because as I said before, they're very different, have, music playing through their house, and music is part of their sort of unwind. I listen to music in the car, but we don't really play it in the house, so I have to say it's not music that binds me and my husband. It would more likely be a silly TV show like Seinfeld. Like that would be, if there were a musical theme, it would be the theme song to Seinfeld. How about that? Do
you have any favorite episodes or lines from Seinfeld?
Well, I have my husband and my sons, and sometimes my daughter, but mostly my husband and my sons can quote Seinfeld like they were in the cast. But my favorite episode is when Elaine was stuck in the subway. And anyone listening who remembers that episode would remember. Second would be Elaine dancing. But she is, the whole episode, she's trying to get to an event, and she's stuck in the subway with the gift in her hand of the wedding or the birthday party that she's going to, in the subway stuck. And if you've ever been stuck in a New York subway, it's a visceral thing to see her in that situation, and she wants to get off the car and she wants to get there, and she's just sort of increasing, and she's trying to talk herself off the ledge all at the same time. And it's so funny because it's so real, and everyone trying not to be that person who is having a fit in that moment, which will do no good whatsoever, and yet you're having a fit because you want to get out of the subway car. And that I could watch that episode on repeat while playing Tears for Fears Mad World in the background.
That sounds like fun. All right, let's do a little bit of a fire round.
Okay.
Favorite cocktail?
Probably a margarita.
Favorite meal?
My mother used to make meatball stroganoff for my birthday, or if I had a good report card or something like that. And I can't remember the last time I ate it, but if I want to treat myself, that's what pops into my mind. Second choice in reality as an adult would probably be pad thai.
Oh, that's interesting. Favorite curse word? You could kind of allude to it. You don't have to say it unless you want to.
I probably won't say it, but it begins with an F.
We have that in common. And it's funny because it's like the only one I say. I don't say
I say a lot of them, but I do have a favorite.
Is there a favorite sport?
That's tough. I, as I said earlier, grew up in the Southeast, which is pretty much football and baseball. And I do love both of those sports, and I'm a big fan. I became very attached and started to really enjoy college basketball when I was at the University of Missouri, where it is much more traditional in the Midwest, to enjoy basketball. Sort of, not that we don't have wonderful college basketball in the Southeast, but I would consider that probably a more recent phenomenon in post my college years, where it has really elevated there and become an equivalent fan experience. But I just sort of like the thrill of competition and seeing people dig deep, and the fun of really cheering. I like to watch tennis. I watch golf, for heaven's sake. I mean, I'm really sort of pretty open about. I just enjoy it, and
each sport has its interesting wrinkles.
It does, and yeah. I just have so much respect for what it takes to be an athlete, being not athletic at all myself. I mean, I exercise, but that's for fitness. I am not physically capable of competing in any successful way. And so I respect it, I enjoy it, and I find that sort of very specific moment of where it doesn't matter what else is going on in your world, in your life. All you can do is focus on what it means to do your very best in that moment. I'm a fan of that, and I enjoy it pretty much regardless of what sport is drawing that out of the particular athlete.
If you could go anywhere in the world, schedule wasn't an issue, by yourself, where would it be?
I travel alone a lot, actually, because what I often do is, because of this university work, I do get to, it's one of the most amazing things is I've been able to, by virtue of conferences or exchanges or taking students on study abroad, teaching at partner universities, I've been to a lot of places, and I often will hook on a little time if I have, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday before I come home to do a little exploration. It's such a waste to be all the way over somewhere and not do anything more. So I know the answer to that because I did this recently. I went to Cambodia on the back of a working trip in Asia and went to the ruins around Angkor Wat and the surrounding area, and it was magical. It was magical, but much like sports, there are very few places I wouldn't find some reason to want to go to and explore. And I've come over time, it was an adjustment to enjoy. I love traveling with friends and family, and I do that too, but I also really like traveling alone and just doing for a few days what I want to do, eating what I want to eat when I want to, sleeping where I want to, and not talking at all.
It's good refresh time.
It is. It's deep.
If you could go anywhere in the world with your husband, where would that be?
Barcelona. That is our favorite shared city. We love Barcelona. We love it that it's on the water. That's sort of an anchoring quality for us. We both love the water. We love its whimsy in how the artistic culture emerged there and what that's meant for architecture and the way the streets wind and the way the different neighborhoods. We love the food. I love cava. And I love that it's bright, it's vibrant, it's colorful, it has an aesthetic, and we just both enjoy being there.
Well, President Joan Gabel, thank you for a very vibrant conversation and spending time with Real Leaders with Roshini.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Until next time, keep it real.